The story begins with Erin, a young girl who recalls the tragic events of her past life. She was an orphan betrayed by the very workplace she devoted herself to and ultimately killed in her final moments. She made a wish only to be reborn as a noble child just before dying again. Now a toddler, Erin suffers from a severe illness, burning with fever. As her maids desperately try to keep her conscious, they call for a doctor, but one man, clearly annoyed by her condition, cruelly remarks that if she's going to die, she should do so gracefully. Erin, already overwhelmed by her suffering, realizes with horror that she has been reborn into the very family of the person who killed her in her past life. Fear grips her as she struggles to process this cruel twist of fate. Time passes and Erin eventually recovers, feeling full of energy. She runs around excitedly, much to the distress of her nanny Mari. Worried that Erin might relapse, Mari scolds her and insists she rest, fearing she could lose her position in the Bronut household if anything happens to her. Erin reluctantly agrees, but still finds it difficult to accept her new life as a member of the Bronut family, the very people who were responsible for her previous death. Erin recalls her past life as a secretary for the Bronut family, where she worked tirelessly for 10 years only to be betrayed and killed by Harvin Bronut. She is shocked to realize that after reincarnation she has returned to a time before he officially inherited the title of Duke. The Bronut family estate, once her workplace, is now her home. The late Duke Rafa Bronut had struggled to choose a successor among his 3 sons, as none of them had a talent for business. In the end, Harvin was the only viable choice and inherited the title. Once he was certain of his position, he secretly engaged in corruption and crime, entrusting Erin with handling illegal money laundering operations. Despite being forced into these shady dealings, she obeyed every command, believing that her loyalty and hard work would eventually earn her recognition and security. However, her efforts were in vain. Arnik took all the benefits while treating her as nothing more than a disposable pawn. Over the years, Erin had witnessed countless people fall victim to his ruthless schemes, but she never imagined she would suffer the same fate. Raised with the support of the Bronut family, she had naively believed in their appreciation of her worth, but in the end, she was just disposable trash from a common background. Erin recalls the tragic end of her previous life, where she was left to die alone at a secluded seaside resort. Though the place was peaceful, it also ensured that no one would hear her cries for help. Desperate to live, she begged for mercy, but no one showed her pity. In the end, she met a cold and lonely death, with no friends, no lover, no family, and nowhere to call home. As her body grew cold, she accepted her fate, acknowledging that she had chosen to be an accomplice to a corrupt man and could only blame herself. Lost in these painful memories, Erin is suddenly brought back to the present by her nanny Mari, who expresses her happiness at seeing her recover. Mari admits that she prayed all night for Erin's health, though she isn't sure if it had any effect. Erin, deeply touched by these kind words, feels an unexpected wave of emotion after a lifetime of loneliness and betrayal. Hearing such genuine care almost brings her to tears. Mari warmly tells Erin that she'll bring her a special dessert, just like in the past, offering biscuits, raspberries, and milk. However, Erin feels uneasy upon hearing this. The combination sounds too familiar. She realizes it's the same menu given to the household serve as a post-meal snack. Shocked, Erin quickly refuses, pretending she isn't hungry. She can't accept food meant for the workers, knowing it would take away from them. Mari seems surprised, but doesn't push further, simply telling Erin to let her know if she changes her mind, since she has stocked up plenty. As Erin reflects, she realizes something crucial. Erin Bronut, the girl she has been reborn as, was never treated well by her own family. The rumors she had heard in her past life were true. As the only daughter of Colin Bronut, one of the late Duke's 3 sons, Erin was neglected due to the strained relationship between Colin and the rest of the family. After her parents' deaths, she was taken into the Duke's estate, but was never properly cared for. Mari, the maid assigned to look after her, was perhaps one of the few people who genuinely cared, but Erin couldn't shake the realization this girl was not treated as a noble's granddaughter at all. The thought unsettles her, and then she remembers the man who had coldly dismissed her when she was sick. Just thinking about him sends a shiver down her spine, making her pale with anxiety. Erin recalls that in her past life, Erin Brown had been adopted by Harvin the same year she joined the estate. However, by the time she arrived at the mansion, Erin had already died in a so-called accident. A fall, but no one among Harvin's servants truly believed that story. Harvin, who didn't even care when his fever-stricken nephew was dying, must have only adopted Aaron to gain favor with the family's head. When she proved to be of no use to him, she likely became a burden, one he disposed of. Clenching her fists, Aaron realizes the danger she is in if things continue as they did before. She will be adopted by Harvin again, leaving her with no way to escape. Just like in her past life, she will be killed without a chance to fight back, but this time she refuses to let history repeat itself. She believes there must be a reason why she was reincarnated as Aaron Bro, struggling to write due to her small hands. She wonders if this reincarnation is a divine message urging her to atone for her past life sins, though this life won't be easy. She knows what she must do, fight tooth and nail to survive just like before, and the first step in ensuring her survival is clear. With fierce determination, Aaron declares she absolutely cannot be adopted by Harvin. Aaron strolls through the vast Bronut family library, searching for specific books. The library, housed in a separate building beside the estate, is massive, a testament to the power and wealth of a duke's family, packed with valuable information. It holds the key to her next step. After scanning the shelves, she finally finds what she's looking for: basic magi science, advanced fundamentals of magi science, and similar books. These will help her execute the plan she worked hard on the previous night. Magi science is a field that scientifically researches magic power, primarily focusing on the creation of magical tools using magic stones. Thanks to magi scientists, the Tyner Empire has developed a rich civilization with numerous magical inventions aiding daily life. However, there's a major drawback: magical tools require vast amounts of magic stones, and their mining supply has been steadily dwindling back. In her previous life, there was even a saying: if you didn't have money, you shouldn't even think about studying magi science. Determined, Aaron immerses herself in the books, preparing for what lies ahead. Aaron struggles to carry the heavy books, reminding herself that money is no issue for the wealthy Bronut family, especially since the person considering adopting her is only interested in magi science. As she walks through the library, she notices a particularly messy table covered in piles of books and scattered papers. Curious, she scans the titles and realizes they are all advanced magi science research materials such as imperial magi science and unified formula. Just as she starts to piece things together, a sudden voice startles her. Move. Aaron freezes, turning pale as she recognizes the speaker: Jeffrey Bronut. Jeffrey, the third son of Duke Rafn, is an infamous researcher known as the Mad Magi Scientist. He avoids interaction with the main estate, locking himself away in his lab, fully absorbed in his research. However, Aaron knows that if someone possesses knowledge of magi science, they might be able to get his attention. Though undeniably eccentric and unpredictable, Jeffrey isn't like Harvin. At least she hopes he may be odd. But he isn't a murderer, right? Aaron gathers her confidence and greets Jeffrey, but he immediately yells at her to put down what she's holding. Flustered, she apologizes, but he harshly tells her to stop lurking and leave. Feeling pale and defeated, Aeon takes a seat, realizing she made a huge mistake. Jeffrey is obsessively protective of his work, and she not only got too close, but also accidentally touched his research journal. Her plan was to gain Jeffy's interest so he might consider adopting her, even though she lacks deep knowledge of magi science. Her experience with future magi tech made her think she could intrigue him instead of making an impression. She's just lucky he didn't throw her out. Peeking at Jeffrey from behind a book, she recalls what she saw in his journal, although it only had basic numbers and symbols. For now, she's certain it was the Auro magic calculation formula. Aaron recognizes Auro as a groundbreaking magic calculation formula in magi science. It allowed the creation of magical tools using only a minuscule amount of magic stones. Though complex and difficult to commercialize, it eventually became an essential component in all magical tools. However, Aaron remembers that Auro was originally developed in Harvick's lab. After becoming heir, Harvin recklessly mismanaged his family businesses, yet the Bronut family survived entirely because of Auro. In her past life, Harvin took immense pride in how the family benefited from his discovery, boasting endlessly about his foresight. But now, seeing the formula in Jeffy's hands, Aaron anxiously wonders, did Harvin steal Jeffy's research? She wants to warn Jeffrey that Auro will become a major invention in a few years, and that he must not let Harvin take credit for it. However, she fears that Jeffrey, obsessed With research probably doesn't care about things like that. If he did, he would have raised hell in her past life. But he never did. Jeffrey, deeply focused on his work, grows frustrated as he struggles with a formula and throws a paper away. In frustration, Erin notices the discarded paper and scans it quickly, realizing something important. Nervously, she approaches Jeffrey to point it out, but before she can say anything, Jeffrey abruptly snatches the paper from her. Shocking her without a word, Jeffrey immediately starts working on the paper again, ignoring Erin's presence. Frustrated by his silence, Erin persists, trying to get his attention. Finally, she gathers her courage and points out that he made a miscalculation. Jeffrey angrily dismisses Erin's claim that his calculations are wrong, shouting at her. In frustration, Erin, feeling pale and nervous, wonders why he's so mad when she was only trying to help, but her frustration builds up and she emotionally yells back, insisting that his calculations are incorrect in 3 places. Before running out of the room, Jeffrey is caught off guard and shouts after her, but she's already gone. Later, Erin sits in her room, frustrated with herself for blurting things out without thinking. She worries that she's ruined her chances of being adopted and even considers running away, but realizing there's nothing she can do right now, she decides to go back to the library to borrow the books she missed the day before. She also plans to apologize to Jeffrey if she sees him. However, as she opens the door, she's startled to find Jeffrey standing right in front of her. He shouts her name, making her flinch and instinctively close her eyes in fear, but instead of scolding her, he holds out the paper from earlier and demands to know if the 3 spots she mentioned were actually errors. Erin, still shocked, nervously confirms that yes, those were indeed the mistakes. Jeffrey, now convinced that Erin must have been snooping on his research, demands to know how long she's been looking at it. Erin, confused, insists that she only saw it for the first time yesterday, but Jeffrey remains skeptical, questioning how she could have spotted 3 complex errors in such a short time, as his research isn't something that can be understood at a glance. Realizing his misunderstanding, Erin explains that she's simply good at calculations. Jeffrey tests her further, asking if she knows high-level sorcery equations. Erin confidently replies that even advanced formulas still follow basic math principles like addition and subtraction. Jeffrey remained suspicious, but intrigued. Erin, sensing his doubt, challenges him to test her abilities. After a brief pause, Jeffrey smirks and agrees, finding the idea of testing her not a bad idea at all. Jeffrey puts Erin to the test, handing her a pile of research papers and asking her to check for mistakes. Erin, though unfamiliar with sorcery formulas, even in her reincarnated life, carefully scans the pages and quickly identifies the errors. As Jeffrey continues to test her, Erin confidently points out the mistakes or confirms when a page has no errors. Jeffrey was more and more astonished by her accuracy and speed, questioning how she can solve such complex calculations in her head. Meanwhile, Erin feels secretly pleased, knowing she has impressed him. She recalls how in her previous life she was one of the brightest prodigies in the orphanage, which led to her sponsorship by the Bronut family. Jeffrey, impressed by Erin's skills, orders her to meet him in the afternoon. When Erin asks if it's at the library, he corrects her it's at his lab. Surprised, Erin asks why, and Jeffrey bluntly states that she will be his assistant from now on. This leaves Erin feeling anxious and conflicted. She had wanted to get his attention, but this feels like a business arrangement, not a step toward adoption. Before leaving, Jeffrey suddenly asks what her favorite snack is, catching Erin off guard. She hesitates, knowing that expensive snacks were rare luxury for her, and eventually answers biscuits. Jeffrey confirms her choice and leaves, while Erin resigns herself to the situation, thinking she has no choice but to go. Erin stands outside Jeffy's room, trying to gather her courage. She reassures herself that becoming his assistant isn't the worst case scenario, but anxiety creeps in. What if she works endlessly like in her previous life, only to be adopted by Havnik and meet a tragic end? She quickly pushes away the negative thoughts, realizing that Jeffrey is her only option right now, and decides to win his favor. Just as she's about to knock, Jeffrey opens the door, catching her off guard. Flustered, she steps inside, hesitantly greeting him. Looking at around his room, she's surprised by how clean it is, especially for someone who spends most of his time locked up in research. Jeffrey directs Erin to a small desk, mentioning that the head butler prepared it in a hurry and promising to get her a better one later. Aaron thanks him and sits down. Jeffrey tells her to wait while he finishes his work and casually mentions that she can eat what's on the desk. Curious, Aaron notices a covered dishcloth and opens it, expecting biscuits, but instead, she finds a strawberry cream cake. Stunned and drooling, she hesitates, wondering if she's really allowed to eat it. Seeing Jeffy's approving gesture, she excitedly digs in as she eats. Aaron is overwhelmed by how delicious the cake is, savoring the perfect blend of cream and strawberries. She even starts to feel that Jeffrey doesn't seem as grumpy or scary as she thought. Jeffrey, noticing how quickly she finished, asks in surprise. Embarrassed, Aaron apologizes, explaining that it's the best thing she's ever tasted. Jeffrey coolly tells her to clean her mouth before speaking. Confused, Aaron checks her reflection on a fork and realizes that her face is covered in cake crumbs. Blushing, she quickly thanks him after realizing her mouth is covered in crumbs. Aaron quickly turns away to clean herself. Jeffrey then asks if she wants more cake, to which Aaron frantically declines, saying she's full. Jeffrey assures her that if she ever wants more, she just has to ask, since as long as she works there, she'll always get snacks. Aaron then notices Jeffrey blushing, with his ears turning red. Suspicious, she wonders if he made the cake himself and asks him directly. Jeffrey, trying to act indifferent, huffs and claims he's just picky about what he eats. Aaron, realizing that Jeffrey not only excels in research, but also makes incredible cake, starts seeing him in a more refined and elegant light. Jeffrey quickly shifts the conversation back to work, telling her to follow him as he explains her duties. Jeffrey hands Aeon a book titled Everything About Magic Science, proudly stating that he wrote it himself and hasn't found a better book in the Empire. Aaron thanks him, but Jeffrey clarifies that he's only lending it to her, not giving it away freely. He then mentions that since she's recharged her energy, she can start working. Aaron is confused, so Jeffrey explains that geniuses like them need sweets to fuel their brains, as sugar helps with brain function. Aaron, realizing that the cake was just meant to energize her for work, is momentarily shocked. Jeffrey then assigns her a task similar to the morning's, finding mistakes in a large pile of research. Aaron, overwhelmed, thinks to herself that this is child exploitation. However, when Jeffrey casually adds that he'll prepare chocolate and apple pies for tomorrow, Aaron's mood instantly shifts, and she excitedly agrees to work hard. Aaron happily runs down the hallway, humming to herself. She is thrilled that her plan to appeal to Jeffrey through magic science worked even better than expected. She believes that by continuing to show interest in the field and assisting in research, her likability will naturally increase. Eventually, when she reaches the highest level of favor, she plans to subtly push for adoption into the Bronut household, where she can enjoy a life of luxury. As she moves forward, two boys, Avalon and Bim, will spot her and rudely call out, mocking her presence in the main building. Aaron recognizes them as Harvin's sons and expected to run into them. Eventually, she notes that they are still as rude as ever, but decides not to react. Observing their expressions, she realizes that they have likely been bothering her regularly. However, unlike in her past life where she had to bow and scrape as a secretary, she now considers herself on the same level as them. With newfound confidence, she simply smiles instead of feeling inferior. Avalon and Bim are stunned when Aaron simply smiles instead of reacting negatively. Confused, they assume she must have eaten something bad. With confidence, Aaron dismisses them, saying she is busy and they can talk later. This annoys Avalon, who pokes her forehead and demands to know why an outsider like her is in the main house. Surprised that Aaron isn't crying like usual, Avalon is momentarily taken aback. Byl, also irritated by her attitude, snaps at her. However, Aaron remains unfazed and boldly responds that she isn't an outsider. Then, with a smirk, she teases them by calling them the Peeing Brothers, leaving Avalon and Bimel shocked and anxious. Bimel whispers in shock, wondering how Aaron knows their secret. Avalon, annoyed, tries to brush it off but is clearly rattled. Aaron smirks, revealing that their mother used to constantly worry about it while she worked in the house. She tells them she'll keep it a secret as long as they stop by bothering her, and scolds them, pointing out that even a younger sibling wouldn't act as immaturely as they do. This enrages Avalon, who screams, denying that Aaron could ever be their sibling. Bimel, also furious, accuses her of getting cocky just because she found a weakness. Unbothered, Aaron walks away, remarking that they're either avoiding her because they're scared of poop or just find it dirty. Avalon, unable to accept being ignored, blocks her path angrily, demanding that if she wants to leave she'll have to get past him, calling it the road for outsider Aaron. Annoyed by Avalon and B's behavior, refuses to back down and demands they move aside. While she's still being nice, her confidence shocks them, frustrating Avalon even more. She warns them that if the Duke finds out about their actions, they'll be in trouble. Enraged, Avalon grabs Aeon's hair and yanks it, calling her cocky and threatening her. He mocks her for being an orphan and claims that their grandfather wouldn't care if she disappeared. Triggered by his words, Aaron smashes Avalon in the face with the book she's holding, leaving him in pain and bleeding from the forehead. She boldly declares that she'd rather be an orphan than turn out like him, calling him trash. Meanwhile, panicked by Avalon's injury, shouts and alarm. Aaron, still furious, waves the book in the air, scaring them further. Frightened, Avalon and Bull retreat with Bimble, calling Aaron crazy as they flee. Avalon, enraged after being hit by Aaron, tries to strike back, calling her an outsider and threatening her, but Aaron fights back, fiercely grabbing his face and refusing to back down. The two engage in a heated struggle. Later, Avalon and Bimble storm into their father's office to complain about Aaron demanding punishment. Avalon shouts for justice while Ball insists that Aaron, an outsider, dared to hit his brother there. Father, upon seeing Aaron's disheveled state after the fight, glares at her and questions the situation. Avalon, attempting to manipulate the events in his favor, lies outright, saying they merely asked why Aaron was in the main house, but she insulted them by calling them pissing babies and then attacked Avalon with a book. Aaron is left stunned, realizing how easily they are twisting the story to make her look like the aggressor, putting her in a difficult position. Aaron's father scolds her cruelly, accusing her of making it obvious that she grew up without parents. Avalon, still furious, shoves her roughly and demands their father punish her instead of addressing Avalon's aggression. Their father belittles him for getting beaten by a smaller girl, but still orders Aaron to apologize and end the matter. Aaron is shocked and angry. Avalon started the fight, insulted her, grabbed her hair, and even hit her, yet she's the one expected to kneel and apologize. When she remains silent in disbelief, her father's expression darkens. He forcefully shoves her and demands an apology, his voice filled with intimidation. Aaron tries to protest, insisting that Avalon started it, but her father's anger only intensifies, ordering her to kneel immediately. Aaron, terrified, recognizes the cold, commanding look in Aaron's eyes, a warning to stay quiet and submit, realizes that resisting might only make things worse and considers whether it's better to give in. Suddenly, Jeffrey arrives, his presence shocking Aaron. His voice cuts through the tension as he questions what kind of treason did she commit to deserve kneeling. Aaron is stunned and anxious, wondering why Jeffrey is here. Did he just pass by, or is this deliberate? Before she can process it, Jeffrey gently pats her head, offering comfort, and remarks, "You've made a real mess." Harvin, furious at being interrupted, insists that he is disciplining Aaron and questions why Jeffrey is interfering. Jeffrey calmly observes that no one seems to be seriously hurt, which further enrages Harvin. He shouts that Aaron, a mere girl, dared to strike a legitimate grown-up family member, calling it outrageous. Jeffrey counters by questioning whether someone who pulls hair and calls another a freeloader and an orphan can truly be considered a brother. Harvin, flustered, tries to deny it, but Jeffrey challenges anyone to confirm the truth for themselves, making Harvin even angrier. Ignoring him, Jeffrey tells Aaron they have no time to waste and orders her to leave with him, to which she quickly agrees. Later, Jeffrey tends to Aaron's wounds, instructing her to hold still and asking if she is in pain. Nervous, Aaron assures him she is fine as he warns her to be more careful. She internally worries that she has ruined her chances of being adopted. She believes that while she might be useful as an assistant, they would never go as far as adopting her, and of all people it had to be Jeffrey who witnessed her mess. Jeffrey reassures Aaron that after all the chaos, Avalon and Bamel won't bother her for a while. He teasingly refers to them as the Pea Pants brothers, making Aaron flustered. He then tells her that since he was the one who found her this time, he'll let it slide, but if anything happens in the future, she should inform him. After all, she is his assistant and he is in charge. Aaron nods, promising not to mess up next time, but Jeffrey interrupts, firmly stating that she didn't do anything wrong today and should never apologize when she has done nothing wrong. Handing her a book, he explains that he picked it up and dusted it off, but offers to buy her a new one if it bothers her. Aaron quickly declines, expressing that she cherishes this book because it was one Jeffrey trusted her enough to lend. She recalls a past memory where he told her he doesn't just lend books to anyone, realizing how meaningful that simple act was to her. Jeffrey acknowledges her response with a quiet "I see." Nanny Mari becomes worried upon seeing Aaron's bruised face and stretched out clothes, immediately asking what happened. Aaron, afraid of spreading rumors, lies and says she simply fell. Mari, unconvinced, suspects she was in a fight and even questions if Sir Jeffrey was involved. Aaron quickly denies it, flinching at the misunderstanding and showing the medicine Jeffrey gave her as proof. Mari gently holds Aaron's hands, urging her to always be honest so she can help her. Aaron, still unwilling to reveal the truth, insists she just tripped on the stairs. Mari, sighing, noting how much Aaron has changed since recovering from her fever. Aaron internally knows that Mari, being the closest to the real Aaron, is the most likely to notice the difference in her behavior. She wonders how to reassure her without raising suspicion. However, Mari clarifies that she likes the stronger version of Aaron, but asks her not to hide her pain, patting her gently. She makes Aaron promise to be honest when she's hurting. Aaron agrees. Aaron looks on some research papers, amazed that Jeffrey was about to throw them away. She realizes that the blueprints contain designs for magical tools that will become essential in the future, though they are currently too advanced and lack the necessary materials. Aaron knows their value will skyrocket in 10 years. She sees a huge opportunity if she can commercialize them and secure the patents. Now she'll make a fortune when demand rises. This would also serve as a backup plan in case Jeffrey doesn't adopt her. However, time is running out. Jeffrey unexpectedly left for the royal palace 3 days ago, much earlier than in her past life. She suspects that becoming his assistant may have altered the timeline, knowing Jeffrey will be even busier upon his return. Aaron feels pressured to produce and distribute the products before then, but as a 7-year-old, she wonders how she can possibly gather the expensive materials, manufacture the tools, and handle distribution on her own. Aaron is startled when an old man arrives and realizes it's the Duke, Jeffrey's grandfather. Nervous, she quickly bows and addresses him as grandfather, though she has never spoken to him one-on-one before, except at his funeral in her past life. When the Duke asks about Jeffrey, Aaron explains that he left for the royal palace a few days ago. The Duke becomes angry, frustrated that Jeffrey is still wasting his life in the lab. Aaron is confused by his reaction and wonders if he has an issue with Jeffrey going to the palace. The Duke declares that if Jeffrey continues like this, he will be kicked off the estate and must clean up his act. Aaron is shocked. She knows Jeffrey is dedicated to his research, but not in the careless way rumors suggest. If the Duke knew that Jeffrey was working on something significant with Alro, he might think differently. When the Duke threatens to take away Jeffrey's lab, Aaron panics, realizing how disastrous that would be. Summoning her courage despite her anxiety, she firmly protests, insisting that this cannot happen. As the Duke's assistant informs him that everything is ready, the Duke pauses and questions Aaron about what she meant by saying that can't happen. Nervously, Aaron insists that Jeffrey must not be kicked out, arguing that his research is far from useless. She passionately explains that if his work succeeds, it will greatly benefit the entire empire. Internally, she knows that Alro profits alone would be enough to support generations without needing to work. The Duke scoffs, but Aaron continues, stating that Jeffrey will soon earn enough money to be independent and won't have to rely on him anymore. When the Duke asks if Jeffrey himself said this, Aaron hesitates before awkwardly affirming it. The Duke then cryptically remarks about living in the past and making Jeffrey seem like a madman. Leaving Aaron confused, he warns her that if she is trying to deceive him, she will also be in trouble. When he inquires about her role as Jeffrey's assistant, Aaron confidently states that she identifies and corrects calculation errors in the research journal. Mentally, the Duke, intrigued, examines the research papers, while Aaron eagerly adds that Jeffrey calls her a genius at calculations. The Duke and his assistant begin scrutinizing Jeffrey's work, seemingly reassessing their opinion. Jeffrey's assistant admits he doesn't fully understand magical science equations, but he finds it impressive that Aaron can read and even solve them mentally. The Duke, surprised by the complexity of the equations, questions Aaron about her ability. She confirms that she solves them on her own, though Jeffrey has been teaching her about magical science rituals. The Duke then asks what she plans to do with this knowledge. Aaron confidently states that she wants to create and sell the items from the blueprints rather than just study them. This piques the Duke's interest, and he asks what exactly she is referring to. Excited, Aaron explains that while these inventions may seem unfamiliar now in The future people will want them one by one. Even the Duke himself, amused, the Duke chuckles and asks if she truly believes these products will be that popular. Without hesitation, Erin confidently affirms that they will sell. While the Duke tells Erin that if her claims are true, she should be able to manage on her own, even if the research funding is cut. After the annual meeting, Erin is shocked, realizing she may have unintentionally trapped herself with her own words. The Duke, seemingly satisfied, states that there will be no issue securing funding and dismisses Erin, telling her she no longer needs to guard the empty lab. After he leaves, Erin is left confused, wondering if she spoke about the blueprints for nothing or if the Duke had planned this conversation from the start. One thing is certain, she has just made the situation worse. As the Duke and his assistant leave, the assistant reminds him that he had planned to clean up the lab that day. However, the Duke decides to postpone it until after the annual meeting. When the assistant asks if he is referring to Jeffrey, the Duke angrily denies it. The assistant then comments on Erin's intelligence and potential, which the Duke acknowledges. He recalls how Erin was silent when she first arrived at the mansion, bringing back memories of his son, Erin's father, who had once considered leaving the family but ultimately died, leaving Erin behind. The Duke reflects on how drastically she has changed overnight, while the assistant suggests that perhaps Jeffrey discovered her talent and gave her confidence. However, the Duke dismisses the idea, calling Jeffrey incapable of even taking care of himself. The Duke's assistant points out that the Duke always reacts strongly whenever Jeffrey is mentioned. He suggests that Erin's sudden change might simply be her true nature emerging as children adapt quickly to new environments. He then proposes that Erin should receive a formal education like the young lords, emphasizing that the Bronut family is known for nurturing talented individuals, and Erin's abilities align with that principle. The Duke acknowledges her talent, but argues that she is too young to be tested. When the assistant asks what kind of test he means, the Duke refers to Erin's claim that she will create and sell items to secure research funding. He dismisses the idea, believing that a child cannot accomplish such a thing. He admits that he only mentioned it in hopes that Jeffrey might hear about it and finally get serious. However, he internally notes that Raphael's assumptions about the situation are completely off the mark. Erin stands in front of grandfather Raph's office, holding her sketchbook, thinking about the timing of her visit. She assumes the meeting with his retainers must have ended by now. She notes that the Duke usually splits his time between the imperial capital's townhouse and the castle, but he has stayed at the castle longer this time, likely due to preparations for the annual gathering. This gathering is a major event where the Bronut family presents their achievements and makes important decisions. It is held only 3 days a year and carries significant influence. Any decision made during this event is strictly binding, meaning changes must wait until the next year because of its importance. No Bronut family member ever skips it. Erin reflects on the upcoming annual gathering where her adoption into the Harvin family is expected to be announced. She recalls how busy this period used to be, as she had to stay up all night preparing reports for Harvin. Harvin was only interested in immediate profits and ignored future-oriented businesses. When his ventures failed, he would spend excessively to cover them up, leaving his subordinates to handle the mess. Erin had to draft reports, making these failures appear as successes, a time she remembers as exhausting and dreadful. In contrast, working with Jeffrey is smooth and comfortable. However, even the best workplace becomes unbearable if it disappears. She grows anxious, fearing that alongside her adoption announcement, the family might declare an end to Jeffy's research. Although this didn't happen in her past life, circumstances are slightly different now, making her unable to sit back and do nothing. Erin battles her nerves, determined to present her proposal to Raper. She reassures herself that as the head of the Bronut family, he will find her idea intriguing. Confidently, she knocks on the door. A man opens it and is surprised to see her. A maid notices and comments on her elegant attire. As Erin enters, people around her begin whispering, speculating that she might be the late Cologne's child due to her resemblance to him. Understanding the importance of the retainers, Erin realizes that leaving a good impression on them could be even more beneficial than impressing the Duke himself. Erin greets everyone politely, which earns her admiration from the retainers. They find her adorable and speculate whether she has brought a drawing or a letter to show her grandfather, the head of the family. Erin is surprised to see Viscount Du, who asks about her visit. She confidently states that she wants to meet her grandfather, which makes the retainers even more curious and excited. They comment on how thick her sketchbook looks and joke about how granddaughters are always lovable. Do takes Erin inside Ron's office, announcing her arrival while her grandfather is still in a meeting. Erin immediately becomes nervous, bows and greets him, but struggles to lift her head due to anxiety. The retainers whisper among themselves, giggling at her nervousness and noting that she must have worked hard to time her visit right. After the meeting, they also notice sweat on her forehead, showing her effort. Grandfather Raf Iron finally speaks and asks Erin to come close. However, Erin grows even more anxious, wondering why all these people are still in the room instead of leaving, making the situation even more overwhelming for her. Erin hesitates before presenting her sketchbook to her grandfather, saying she has something to show him. Rafin, having just vented his frustration on Jeffrey, wonders if Erin might be afraid of him. A lady helps Erin on the sofa while Rafar asks if he needs to check it immediately. Erin firmly hands him the sketchbook, prompting him to carefully examine it as curiosity builds. The retainers gather around to see Erin's drawings, making Raft question why they haven't left yet. They awkwardly claim they are simply curious about Erin's drawing skills and assume she must have also learned to write. Annoyed, RFA reminds them they have plenty of work to do and orders them to leave. He then turns to Viscount Dewey, questioning why he's still there. Their Dew responds that he will stay a little longer as he just remembered something important to discuss. As Rafton continues examining Aeon's sketchbook, he clicks his tongue in thought. Dush observes him closely, noting that even when reading top secret documents, the Duke was never this slow. He briefly wonders if the sketchbook contains a threat, but quickly dismisses the idea. Rap Iron wouldn't have that expression if it were suddenly. Raffin bursts into laughter, shocking both Erin and Dew. Still chuckling, he marks on what Erin has brought him. Curious, Dew asks if he can take a look as well, and Raffin allows it. When Dutch reads Erin's sketchbook, he finds a written request to grandfather: please turn these blueprints into products and sell them. In exchange, please keep Sir Jeff's lab and research funds the way they are. Don't kick him out. Realizing the weight of her words, Deuce is stunned. This isn't just a sweet letter from a granddaughter, it's essentially a business proposal for an empire-leading merchant like Rafa. To receive such a direct request from a child is astonishing. As Dush continues reading, he notices another message from Erin: please only turn the page if you agree, otherwise don't turn it. The next page contains crucial information about the products. Dewey now understands why RAF was so deliberate. While flipping through the pages, he was considering whether to proceed, although curious about the next page. Dush recognizes that the contents are confidential, so he decides not to pry. He hands the sketchbook back to Rafi, having seen enough internally. Duce is impressed. A colored pencil proposal that not only presents a business idea, but also subtly controls the negotiation process. Rafer acknowledges Erin's proposal as interesting, but questions what would happen if the business venture leads to a loss. Without hesitation, Erin responds, grandfather, you wouldn't take a loss anyway. Intrigued, Raf Erin asks why is that. Erin confidently argues that if the products don't sell, the materials can be reused, minimizing losses. When her grandfather questions the initial cost, she points out that compared to research funds, it's insignificant, like a mere hangnail. She emphasizes that even if sales are low, the proposal would still help reduce research expenses. Impressed, her grandfather realizes she isn't just mimicking adults, but presenting a solid business deal. Erin asserts that it's a win-win for everyone, and her grandfather acknowledges that even in the worst case, they would break even. Curious, he asks Dush if there are any leftover magic stones at the mansion. Dush confirms they have enough to create about 50 magical tools. Rafine then surprises Aeon by offering her the chance to test her proposal with these materials. Erin is excited while Duce hesitates, questioning his master's intent. However, Raf Iron cuts him off, asserting that he hasn't finished speaking. Erin's grandfather approves her proposal and instructs her to first create a test product, assigning someone to assist her. He then tasks her with distributing the completed items, suggesting they be displayed at Hangdu's shop since there are only about 50 units. Duce hesitantly agrees, but points out that he doesn't even know what the product is. Rafer reassures him, saying that while the item may seem unfamiliar now, it will become highly sought after in the future. Even he might want one. Encouraged by his confidence, Erin beams with excitement and eagerly promises to do her best as Erin cheerfully heads to the library humming a tune she feels excited and relieved celebrating her success and securing a deal with her grandfather. Even though she won't personally earn money from the sales, she's happy knowing that if the magical tools sell well, she won't be kicked out of the lab immediately. This gives her more time to work on her research and ensure Jeffy's position remains safe. Determined to make the most of this opportunity, she plans to quickly review journals before focusing on product development for the rest of the week. Though her situation hasn't changed, her adoption status remains undecided and Rafer is still watching her closely. She feels lighter, as if a burden has been lifted. She wonders why she suddenly feels this way. Perhaps it's because she has finally taken control of her own fate. The certainty still lingers, but for the first time she feels like she has achieved something meaningful. Erin is in the library when a librarian named Alphonse greets her. Though Erin doesn't recognize her, Alphonse explains that she has seen Erin before, but never had the chance to introduce herself. She then informs Erin that she has come to deliver a large stack of books that Jeffrey ordered. Seeing the sheer number of books, Erin is shocked and wonders what they are for. Alphonse also shares a message from Jeffrey stating that this time the books are not alone but gift. He even says that if Erin doesn't want to read them, she can simply toss them aside. Erin finds this odd. Why would he go to the trouble of buying so many books just to tell her to discard them? As she picks up one of the books, she wonders if Jeffrey is encouraging her to study harder or if he feels guilty about how she handled borrowed books before. While lost in thought, Erin suddenly remembers the day Jeffrey saved and comforted her, telling her that she hadn't done anything wrong. That memory warms her heart, making her realize that despite her confusion, she doesn't dislike his gesture. Jeffrey returns home late at night, drenched in dirty rain. Frustrated by yet another failed research attempt, he grumbles about the so-called best Imperial research lab, feeling that all their efforts have only led to discovering a similar but ultimately useless crystal. Sighing, he recalls a conversation with his colleagues who reminded him that determining the crystal's composition from burnt traces was an impossible task, but Jeffrey refuses to accept that. He believes they must find a way no matter how difficult. His thoughts then shift to Erin. Despite her young age, she had easily pointed out flaws and complex formula, something even the chief researchers struggled with. Thanks to her, their stagnant research had finally seen progress, and she had spoken of it as if it were nothing special. Unlike others who became discouraged, Erin remained dedicated and enthusiastic in the lab. This makes Jeffrey consider formally training her, perhaps even sending her to an academy or institute for proper education, but realizing she might be too young for that, he contemplates teaching her himself until she's ready. As he he suddenly imagines Erin calling him daddy with a bright, cheerful smile, an image that resembles a happy family scene with a wife and child. However, this vision only brings him sadness, hinting at a painful past or a longing for something he knows he can never have. Erin sits in her room peacefully, reading a book and reflecting on how busy the past 2 weeks have been. Since returning from Raver's office, she has been fully occupied with studying magic science, consulting on magical tool development, reviewing logs, and handling various tasks almost as much as she did in her past life. However, she feels relieved that she managed to complete all the logs Jeffrey assigned her, leaving only her reading for the day. Before he returns in the evening, her nanny Mari interrupts, reminding her that she had planned to rest today. Mari encourages Erin to go outside and play in the garden, saying that children grow better when they get fresh air and sunlight. Erin, initially uninterested, argues that she was just about to start reading Mari and assists, pointing out that she hasn't been outside much due to a recent fever. Though reluctant, Erin decides to take a short walk, reasoning that since she is just a 7-year-old child in this life, pushing herself too hard might lead to serious illness, which she wants to avoid. While strolling in the garden, Erin enjoys the pleasant weather and the scent of blooming flowers, feeling glad she listened to Mari as she passes by a water fountain. She overhears a conversation and recognizes the voice. She notices a noble woman, Syria, Baron Havoc's wife, speaking with a man. Syria expresses concern about not gaining her father's favor if she fails to secure admission this year. The man acknowledges her worries. Erin watches from the sidelines as Syria hands something to the man, making Erin suspicious. Syria instructs him to ensure admission by any means necessary, promising to give him the rest of the payment once it is confirmed. The man reassures her that the bribe should be enough to guarantee success before they Ken discuss further. Sierra senses someone nearby and looks in Aaron's direction. However, Aaron carefully sneaks away to avoid being seen. Sierra then changes the subject, praising the man for his dedication to teaching children. The man humbly denies taking credit, but Sierra insists and bids him farewell. As he departs, Sierra approaches Aaron and scolds her for not greeting an adult properly. Aaron quickly greets her and pretends she was following a butterfly. To avoid suspicion, Sierra, seemingly unconcerned, allows Aaron to leave and walks away. Aaron is shocked by what she just witnessed. Havoc siblings got into the Royal Academy through bribery. She realizes that the man with Sierra must have been Hilberg, the tutor of the Bruno family, who helped Avalon and VL cheat their way, and this explains why Avalon, who lacked talent, struggled academically, repeated grades, and barely graduated. Frustrated that she has no way to record this evidence, Aaron wishes she had a magical recording tool, but decides to keep this information in mind for future use. Just then a butler approaches Aaron, addressing her respectfully and informing her that the head of the family has summoned her to his office. Aaron excitedly rushes into the Duke's office and greets him warmly. The Duke informs her that he has called her for a midterm review. Aeon notices a product on the table and is surprised by its quality. It looks even better than she expected. The Duke asks her to demonstrate the portable hairdryer she developed. Aaron explains that while hairdrying tools already exist, her product's true value lies in its long-term usability. She tests it, showcasing its functionality. The Duke acknowledges its high demand, revealing that the first 50 units sold out immediately in the capital. Aaron is surprised by the rapid success. He further explains that noble women eagerly lined up to reserve it after learning that it maintains a stable temperature without overheating. The Duke also mentions that it's been a long time since he saw Du's, likely a business associate, so excited about something. Aaron is delighted upon hearing the news. This success aligns perfectly with her strategy. She wanted to introduce this product first because traditional hot air blowers are large, difficult to use, and can burn hair if handled. Her new dryer, however, is lightweight, allows users to set the desired temperature, and is much easier to handle. She recalls that when magical tools became widespread, this was one of the first products to gain popularity. While the current price may be too high for commoners, wealthy noble women would definitely find it worth the cost. The Duke is impressed with Aaron's business sense and informs her that since the initial batch of hairdryers has sold out, he considers this a final review rather than a midterm one. He proposes producing more, to which Aaron excitedly agrees. At that moment, Hilberg, the tutor Aaron saw earlier taking a bribe, enters the office. Aaron is surprised and realizes that Hilberg must be worried she might have reported him, though unfortunately she has no evidence. The Duke then introduces Aaron to Hilberg, stating that she is the intelligent child he mentioned earlier. He assigns Hilberg the task of mentoring Aaron, believing that despite her young age she will learn the fast. The Duke introduces Hilberg as Aaron's mentor, instructing her to greet him properly. Aaron, though internally wary of Hilberg due to his involvement in the bribery scandal, manages to smile, curtsy, and introduce herself as Aaron Bruno. Hilberg responds lightheartedly, saying formal manners aren't necessary as the butler serves tea. He remarks that Aaron might stand out at the academy and could even enter the Imperial Academy as the top student. The Duke agrees, acknowledging her intelligence and potential. Hilberg encourages the idea, mentioning the Parent Observation Day as an important event to look forward to. The Duke, however, focuses on the entrance ceremony first. Meanwhile, Aaron is completely taken aback by the conversation. She realizes that if her adoption doesn't go as planned, her future at the academy would be uncertain. Worse, she might not even survive long enough to see it happen in the lab. By Aaron's work, amazed that she managed to organize the journals in his absence, Aaron happily explains that she found it fun and also finished reading the book he lent her. She promises to study diligently with the new book as well, which Jeffrey encourages. However, Aaron knows that her training schedule will prevent her from coming to the lab every day, especially on academy days. She decides to inform Jeffrey about this change. The scene shifts to the Duke's office, where an enraged Jeffrey kicks open the door and storms inside, demanding to know who dared to take his assistant and send them for training. The Duke, furious at Jeffrey's outburst, calls him an impudent fool. Aaron, who had followed Jeffrey, watches the tense exchange. When the Duke notices her presence, he calms himself, but sternly reprimands Jeffrey, stating that he first needs to relearn his manners. Jeffrey argues that his Father was the one who disregarded manners first and demands to know why the Duke is making decisions about his assistant without consulting him. The Duke firmly responds that a child needs education, not work. Jeffrey sarcastically remarks that it seems like Aaron is being locked up and forced to work, but the Duke scoffs at this, reprimanding him. He reminds Jeffrey that even if someone explored the world freely, it's never enough, and scolds him for leaving a 7-year-old child alone in the lab to work. The Duke, frustrated, declares that he is done raising useless people like Jeffrey in the house and orders him to go home. Jeffrey is left speechless while Aaron, watching the confrontation, wonders how to react. She realizes that Raphael, the Duke, seems to hold deep resentment towards Jeffrey. Jeffrey, still defiant, insists that he will personally take care of Aaron's education and career as his. However, the Duke cuts him off, refusing to entertain his stubbornness. Frustrated, Jeffrey angrily shouts back, refusing to let the Duke control everything as he pleases. As the argument between Jeffrey and the Duke escalates, Aaron becomes increasingly anxious, fearing that Jeffrey might be kicked out with no resolution despite his efforts. Unable to stay silent, she gathers her courage and interrupts, suggesting that she can do both, study and assist Jeffrey. Internally, Aaron struggles with her decision, even though her role as an assistant is a business relationship. It allows her to consistently meet Jeffrey, which she doesn't want to lose. At the same time, she sees an opportunity to be recognized by the Duke and doesn't want to miss it more than anything. She fears that if she gives up on something now, she might lose an important connection forever. Jeffrey insists that he will ensure Aaron gets an education, whether at the academy or an academic institute. However, the Duke argues that Aaron is still a child and should receive education within the family. For now, the tension rises as Jeffrey passionately defends of ability, shouting that he knows what she is capable of, to which the Duke angrily retorts that he knows too. As the heated argument between Jeffrey and the Duke continues, Aaron desperately tries to intervene again. However, both men, caught up in their anger, mistakenly shout at her to stay quiet. This overwhelms Aaron, making her even more frightened. The butler, noticing her distress, gently calls out to her, but Aaron is too shaken to respond. Meanwhile, Jeffrey and the Duke continue arguing. Jeffrey insists that he is responsible for Aaron, while the Duke scoffs at the idea, telling him to take responsibility for himself. First seeing Aaron's worsening state, the butler grows more concerned. Aaron, unable to hold back her emotions, bursts into tears, her loud crying abruptly stopping the fight between Jeffrey and the Duke. Regretting the situation, the Duke realizes his mistake and apologizes. Jeffrey, without another word, picks up Aaron and carries her away to comfort her. Back in the lab, Jeffrey tries to offering her a drink to help her calm down. Feeling embarrassed, reflects on how her emotions are harder to control now that she is a child. She never expected to cry just from witnessing adults argue. Jeffrey apologizes for scaring her, reassuring her that his anger wasn't directed at her. Asks how he met her grandfather. Jeffrey brushes it off and instead asks if Havnik visited the lab while he was away. Aaron, confused by the sudden mention of Haven, denies it and asks why he's bringing it up. Jeffrey explains that he heard they were producing something based on the blueprint Aaron had taken. He was just curious about it. Aaron recalled that Jeffrey had previously told her he didn't mind what she did with the blueprint, but now she wonders if he dislikes it being turned into a product. She explains that she saw the blueprint, became curious about how it would work, and mentioned it to her grandfather, who gladly offered to help. However, he asks again if anyone influenced her choice. Aaron firmly states that no one did. Internally, she is relieved that thanks to this she could keep the lab and make money, though she keeps that part to herself to ease Jeffrey's concerns. She assures him that she registered all the patent rights under his name. Jeffrey is surprised to hear about the patent rights and questions Aaron about it. Aaron excitedly explains that since the magic tool was designed by him, securing a patent ensures that he will earn royalties in the future, even if they don't see immediate profits. She mentions that her grandfather told her about it. Jeffrey asks who instructed her to do all this, and Aaron insists that she made the decision herself. She explains that adding a patent clearly credits Jeffrey as the creator. However, internally she admits that she did it for survival. Lab were to shut down, she'd have no money left. She also avoids telling Jeffrey the full truth, fearing that her grandfather might start a fight with the Duke if he try to keep things simple. Aaron reassures Jeffrey that he only needs to speak casually and focus on his research. Jeffrey, still puzzled by her actions, comments that she is really hard to Understand thanks to Jeffrey settling things with the Duke, Erin's wishes were granted she could continue studying at the family estate while working as Jeffy's assistant, the butler, as a mediator in the situation. Jeffrey advised Erin to take things slowly regarding her future, saying it was still too early to decide between a scholarly institution or an academy. Although he seemed displeased, he overlooked it after seeing how happy Erin was on the day of her academy lessons. Erin was excited. Her nanny Mari dressed her up and reminded her to be careful and inform her teacher if she fell. Erin cheerfully agreed. She started attending the academy where she studied under the Bronut family's private tutor. The academy primarily educated direct descendants of the Bronut family, but exceptional children from collateral branches could also join after passing a verification process, since they all belonged to the same family. Erin hoped to get along with them at the academy. A boy approached Erin and greeted her, asking if she was the direct descendant everyone had been talking about. Erin, struggling to see clearly in the bright light, greeted him back. The boy introduced himself as F. Delman, a 10-year-old who had arrived at the castle a month ago. Erin recognized him immediately. Fellman was a future skilled knight who would join the Imperial Knights and was known for his outstanding looks, making him popular among young noble women in high society. Not knowing Fellman was almost like not being a citizen of the Empire. She shook his hand and introduced herself. Suddenly a commotion drew their attention. Fellman frowned, recognizing the source, Abel Vaughn and Bull, two brothers bullying a boy with glasses. Erin immediately recognized the boy, Nukes Brute. Unlike Fellman, Nukes was famous for a different reason. He would later become the court magician of the Imperial Palace in the Ear Empire. Mages born with innate mana were considered extremely rare and precious, making them vastly different from magical scientists like Jeffrey, who relied on mana stones. It had been centuries since the Empire had produced such a powerful mage, and Nukes, after awakening his abilities, would go on to become the greatest of them all. Seeing him being bullied like this shocked Erin. She thought about how furious his father, Maudali Brona, would be if he knew. She wondered why Nukes didn't tell his parents about the bullying. At this rate, he might never reach his full potential as a court mage. Fellman stepped in to stop bullying, telling Ablon and Bimmel to stop since Nukes was clearly in pain. Ablon snapped back, telling Fellman to mind his own business, while Bimmel mocked him, calling him scum. Annoyed Bull also taunted that Fellman wasn't on his level. Erin found their talk about levels ridiculous, but before she could react, Ablon noticed her and, furious, intentionally shoved her heart, making her fall to the floor. At that moment, Alones entered the classroom and greeted everyone politely. Ablon, still irritated, asked why he was there and if the teacher was late again. Alones informed them that Lord Hilberg had encountered an issue, so today's lesson was postponed. Instead, they were assigned to read a book by tomorrow. Ablon, frustrated, complained about having to read another boring book. Alones simply acknowledged the complaint and took his leave. Watching this, Erin realized that as a powerless servant, Alphonse had no authority to intervene in noble kids' affairs. In the end, only an adult with power, or someone from the Bronut family itself, could put a stop to this situation. Bimmel excitedly suggested to Ablon that they go back to horseback riding. Suddenly, Erin stood on a chair and loudly announced that she would pass out books, asking who wanted one. Other students approached her, eager to get a book. However, Alon was irritated by her interruption and snapped at her, calling her an interloper and telling her to leave since there was no class. Erin confidently declared that she was going to read all the books there. Angered by her defiance, Ablon strode toward her, demanding if she thought this was her house. Erin calmly reminded him that the place was open to all family kids. Ablon, in a fit of rage, raised his fist as if to punch her, but hesitated midway, becoming nervous before backing off with a frustrated teach. Erin smirked internally, knowing that if he had any sense he wouldn't continue causing trouble. Meanwhile, Fellman and Nooks noticed that the book Alphonse had brought was the same one they read last time, which was unusual since Alphonse had never made a mistake like this before. Alphonse entered Harvick's office, where Harvick questioned him about his lateness. Alones explained that he had to deliver a book to the academy as requested by Mr. Hilberg. Harvick then asked about Jeffy's journal, but Alphonse revealed that Jeffrey had moved all his research materials to his study after making Lady Erin his assistant. Harvick, skeptical, asked what Erin could possibly contribute. Alphonse hesitated, but under Harvick frustrated Demand for the truth nervously revealed that Aaron was responsible for finding errors in Jeffy's journal. Harvick was shocked. How could a small child do that? The formulas in Jeffy's research were so complex that even scholars struggled with them, yet Aaron could solve them mentally. Harvick smirked, finding it hard to believe, then recalled a conversation with Syria, who had questioned why Aaron was sent to the academy. She was still furious over an incident involving Ablon and feared Aaron's presence returning to the present. Harvick grew even more irritated when he learned that Jeffy's recent invention, which unexpectedly generated great profit, was actually Aaron's idea. Shocked, he questioned whether this was really true, but his frustration toward Aaron and the entire situation only deepened. Syria questioned Harvick about how the young master's product design, which he originally claimed as his own, ended up being taken away. Harvick admitted that his claim was just lip service. He had hoped to steal the design and get ahead, never expecting the invention to be used in the first place. Regretting his mistake, he lamented not having written a proper contract back then. Syria speculated on why the young master willingly handed over his design, essentially giving away his legacy. Harvick dismissed the idea, pointing out that Aaron wasn't even his child. However, Syria found the situation suspicious, suggesting that there might be a larger scheme they were unaware of, possibly a secret transactional deal between the young master and their father, with Aaron being just an excuse. Harvick, overwhelmed and frustrated by Syria's series, shouted at her to stop claiming her words were driving him crazy. Syria, frustrated, yelled at Harvick for aimlessly wandering without taking action. When Harvick reacted to being called a dunce, she quickly clarified that she didn't mean it literally. Calming down, Syria urged him to assess their situation rationally. She acknowledged the stress they were under, but emphasized the need to act quickly and strategically. She warned Harvick that while their father and the young master seemed to be at odds now, there was no telling when they might reconcile. Before that happened, they needed to uncover what the two were planning. Harvick internally realized that Aaron wasn't just a burden, but a valuable asset, as both his father and Jeffrey were vying for her. Smirking, he acknowledged her usefulness and dismissed Alon's, instructing him to return later with a copy of the journal. He warned Alphonse to be prepared if he failed again. As Alphonse left, he felt exhausted, realizing he was getting involved in something more troublesome than expected. Upon opening the door, he was surprised to find Aaron and the other children waiting for him. Aaron hesitated before responding to his question about needing books. Jeffrey arrived and questioned Alon's for being absent during work hours. Alphonse was startled, not expecting Jeffrey to be there. Aaron explained that they had asked Jeffrey for books because Alphonse had brought the wrong one. Nux clarified that they had already read Empire History 1 and wanted to exchange it for Empire History 2. Alon's then suggested that Mr. Hilberg likely wanted them to review Volume 1 again, not just for Aaron, but for them as well. N accepted the explanation, while Aaron confidently stated that she had already read all the books. Nook was surprised that Aaron had read such a complex book, as even he found it difficult to understand. Fellman admitted it took him a long time to read because he kept getting sleepy. Aaron, however, casually stated that she just found it fun. Jeffrey then told Aaron that he had sorted out the issue and that she could go play with her friends. Aaron was momentarily confused but quickly agreed and ran off excitedly after being asked to find books for the others. Jeffrey, noticing Aaron's excitement, asked Alphonse if she was adjusting well at the academy. Alphonse replied that she seemed to be getting along with the young dukes, but not with Ablon. Jeffrey assumed Ablon had been bothering her again and instructed Alon's to keep an eye on him and report any further harassment. Alphonse outwardly smiled but internally felt anxious, realizing that both Jeffrey and the Lord were making her act like a double agent. She wondered what she should do next in this increasingly complicated situation at the academy. Aaron prepared to leave, ensuring she had packed everything. She noticed Nukes trying to hide and reassured him that Abel Vaughn wasn't in the classroom. Nook flinched, but thanked her. Fellman then asked Aaron if she was scared of Ablon, considering how he had threatened her earlier. Aaron casually dismissed it as no big deal, surprising Fellman. Nook admired Aaron's courage, noting that even though she was younger than him, she never backed down from Abel Vaughn and didn't even flinch when he tried to hit her. He admitted that he himself couldn't even speak up. Aaron suggested he tell his parents about the bullying. But Nooks refused, fearing they would be ashamed of him. He explained that his father, who worked on a massive ship, making deals with dangerous people, was always bold and outspoken. Aaron acknowledged this internally, noting that Modeline was indeed well known in the guild for his competence. Nu was upset, feeling helpless against Abel Vaughn's bullying. He feared that if his father found out, he would consider him a disgrace. Aaron understood his feelings and decided to help in her own way. She whispered to Nooks and Fellman that Abel Vaughn and Bim still wet the bed, claiming she overheard Lady Syria talking about it. Fellman giggled in surprise. Aaron boldly lied, mixing some truth with fiction to make Nooks realize that Abel Vaughn wasn't worth fearing. She reassured Nooks that if he couldn't stand up to them, she would do it for him as many times as needed. If they bullied him again, she would even smack them with confidence. She declared she wasn't scared of Abel Vaughn at all and encouraged Nooks to stick with her. Encouraged by her words, Nooks agreed and shook hands with her, asking her to take care of him as Aaron cheerfully walked through the hallway humming a tune. She reflected on her productive day and planned to spend more time with the kids tomorrow. However, when she glanced out the window, she suddenly froze in shock. She noticed someone heading toward her grandfather's office and immediately became anxious, realizing she hadn't prepared anything yet. She panicked, knowing she needed to reach the Duke first and set things up. Determined, Aaron sprinted as fast as she could, but in her rush she accidentally bumped into someone and fell to the ground, screaming for her grandfather. To her surprise, an old man extended his hand to help her up, asking if she was all right. Aaron, disappointed, realized she was too late. As Aaron rushed toward her grandfather's office, she bumped into the Duke, who asked why she was in such a hurry. Seeing Malene Brano, Nu's father, standing beside him, the Duke introduced Aaron and mentioned that she was about the same age as Nooks. When the Duke asked Aaron to wait outside since he had a guest, she protested, wanting to stay and observe how he worked. She put on a cute, pleading expression, promising to sit quietly. Viscount Da supported her, saying it could be a valuable experience and that she might even contribute. A great idea, encouraged Aaron, excitedly agreed. Seeing no issue, the Duke allowed her to stay. The guest, an old man, smiled warmly, saying he didn't mind, as Aaron's affection for her grandfather was heartwarming. Harvin allowed Aaron to stay, though his disapproval was evident. Aaron, determined not to let him proceed with his schemes, recognized Troon, the man Harvin brought along as a swindler, who had previously scammed the Buono family, causing severe financial losses. She knew that if she didn't act, the family would once again fall victim to a fraudulent deal. Resolving to stop it at all costs, she plotted to cancel the contract. The Duke then turned to Troon, asking about the nature of the business he was proposing. Troon formally introduced himself as the guild master of the Pack Guild, which specialized in intercontinental maritime trade, particularly in luxury goods. He explained that their main products included fine art, bespoke leather goods, and rare tapestries, all highly sought after in international markets. The Duke acknowledged the guild's reputation, and Troon proceeded to discuss a collaboration between the Pack Guild and the Sea Guild. The Duke questioned Troonet about his proposal, confirming that he intended to import luxury goods and distribute them within the Empire. While Troonet agreed, the Duke pointed out that his guild seemed capable of handling this independently and asked what they expected from the Empire side. Troon admitted that since the Pack Guild mainly operated outside the Empire, they lacked expertise in its internal market. Modeline then clarified that they were essentially asking the Empire to handle distribution. Trade agreed, but also requested assistance with transportation logistics. This raised concerns as Modeline questioned what Pack was actually contributing if the Empire had to manage both distribution and transport. Harvin, visibly frustrated, slammed his seat and shouted at Modeline for his blunt remarks. However, Modeline calmly pointed out that the Pack Guild wasn't manufacturing the goods themselves and procurement was already handled by their own guild. He emphasized that since these were luxury goods, their true value lay in branding. Before tensions could escalate further, Douche stepped in, urging everyone to remain calm and continue discussions without conflict. Modeline raised concerns about the risks of handling luxury goods, emphasizing that they were prone to currency fighting and difficult to distribute. He warned that a single mistake could lead to massive losses. Harvin, however, insisted that their guild needed to prioritize quality and take some risks. The two men exchanged tense glares as Troonet tried to reassure the Duke, arguing that no one would dare distribute counterfeit goods against the Guild Aaron silently noted Trunk smooth talking skills the Duke after. Considering the matter stated that the guild would deliberate on the proposal and provide an answer soon. Harvin was visibly shocked but reluctantly accepted his father's decision. Later Harvin privately approached Troon assuring him that he would personally explain the contract to the Duke again. Troon, however, remained confident, believing the Duke wouldn't reject a deal proposed by his eldest son. Still, he expressed concern about potential delays given the high value of the goods. He then suggested an upfront deposit to secure the agreement, hinting that this would ensure mutual trust. Troon requested a deposit of 10 million gold, leaving Harvin in shock. Troon reassured him, emphasizing that since they were dealing with luxury goods, a substantial deposit was expected. He then subtly manipulated Harvin, telling him to take his time and not to worry, making it seem like a reasonable request. Internally, Harvin was in turmoil. He realized that many of his past investments had failed. Jeffy's schematics had been taken away, his mining ventures weren't yielding as expected, and his recent performance had been poor. With the annual assembly approaching, he feared that if he backed out of this deal, his reputation would be completely ruined. Harvin reluctantly agreed to TR's demand, promising to prepare the deposit as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Aaron was deep in thought while working on her journal, concerned about Trunet likely bringing up the deposit. She knew that while a 15% deposit might be unavoidable, her priority was to block the main contract to minimize financial losses. Jeffrey noticed her serious expression and asked what was on her mind. Aaron responded vaguely, saying she was thinking about new product ideas, though she wasn't sure if any would be enough to drive Trunet away. Jeffrey suggested that in such cases it was best to eliminate the least useful options first. As Aaron looked through some designs, she spotted an unusual one and asked if it was a staff. Jeffrey explained that it was actually a magic tool designed to determine an animal's gender. He had created it as a side project, but found it useless and abandoned it. Aaron noticed that the label on it read gender identifier. Aaron questioned whether the magic tool was truly useless, suggesting that if it could determine whether an egg would hatch into a rooster or a hen, it might still have some value, even if not in large numbers. Jeffrey admitted he hadn't tested that, but he doubted it was possible. The tool was designed to distinguish between existing roosters and hens, and setting it to recognize an egg as a future chicken would be quite difficult. However, he hesitantly noted that it might be able to differentiate between eggs. Hearing this, Aeon suddenly realized something and excitedly asked Jeffrey to explain that part in more detail. Modeling argued that the risks of the deal were too high, questioning what value Pack Guild truly brought if they contributed nothing beyond smooth words. Dush countered by mentioning PPO Guild's success in other nations, but Modeling pointed out that counterfeit luxury goods were rampant in those markets. He insisted that if the CA Guild were to take on this business, they must ensure their goods remained entirely authentic to maintain credibility. At that moment, Aaron entered the Duke's office. The Duke greeted her warmly, noting that her academy lessons had ended for the day. Aaron cheerfully greeted her grandfather and mentioned that she had come not only to see him, but also because she had a great idea she wanted to share. Harvenic, feeling confident, walked alongside Trunet toward the Duke's office, convinced that today would mark the finalization of their contract. However, his enthusiasm quickly faded when he saw Aaron inside, wondering why she was there yet again. The Duke welcomed them both, stating that he had been waiting. He asked them to take a seat and explain the reason for summoning them. Once more, he wanted to consider the timeline for the deal. Instead of rushing into an agreement, he believed that a business transaction of the scale required mutual trust before moving forward. Troon, surprised, questioned how this trust could be built. In response, the Duke introduced Aaron, indicating that she would explain the plan. Aaron greeted Trunet politely, and he recognized her as the young lady he had met the day before. Curious, he asked what ideas she had to share this time. Internally amused, Aaron thought to herself that Trunet might not find her suggestion so delightful. Once he heard it, she then asked whether he had brought any product samples with him. When Troon confirmed that he had a few, Aaron requested that he leave some behind, revealing their intention developing a magic tool to verify the authenticity of his luxury goods. Troon was puzzled by Aaron's statement and struggled to understand what she was implying. He asked if she was suggesting the creation of an authenticity checker for his goods. Aaron confidently confirmed, explaining that they already had a tool called the gender identifier, and planned to modify its formula to develop a counterfeit detector. She added that Jeffrey himself would handle the development. Troon immediately tensed at the mention of Jeffy's name, revealing his awareness of Jeffy's reputation for inventing reliable tools. Seeing his reaction, and smirked internally, realizing that Troonet understood the credibility of Jeffy's work. Harvin, however, was annoyed and questioned why Jeffrey was suddenly involved, pointing out that he had never been interested in such business ventures before. The Duke intervened, explaining that Jeffrey had recently been working closely with Aaron and found the concept intriguing enough to lend his expertise. Harvin, though irritated, had no choice but to accept the explanation. The Duke then approached Aaron, affectionately praising her sharpness and ability to time her input perfectly just from listening to adults' discussions. He even lifted her up in admiration. Troon, still uncertain, hesitantly asked if the tool had already been completed. The Duke reassured him that while the tool was not finished yet, the initial blueprints were ready and production would begin soon. He emphasized that with counterfeits being so widespread, this was simply a measure to ensure authenticity, implying that Troonet had no reason to object. Feeling cornered, Troonet could only respond hesitantly, forcing himself to agree. Harvin, feeling desperate, confronted Troonet, demanding an explanation for proceeding without proper consultation. He questioned why Troon hadn't shown the samples he had brought. Troon calmly responded that since the Kaki was being meticulous, he too should prepare thoroughly. Vnik argued that he had seen an entire wagon loaded with goods and insisted there must have been at least one suitable item to present. However, Troon dismissed the idea, claiming that those goods were not worthy of being shown to the Call Guild. Harvin was confused by Trunk's sudden arrogance. His attitude had completely changed. He began to suspect that Troonet might be considering taking the deal to another guild if things didn't work out here. Realizing that the Pack Guild likely had many potential partners, Harvin saw Troonet's stance as a take-it-or-leave-it situation, trying to maintain control. Harvin hesitantly reassured Troonet that there was no need to be disheartened. Trun, however, immediately shifted the conversation to the deposit, asking when Harvin could send it. Harvin was caught off guard and reminded Troon that he had said there was no rush, but Trait subtly pressured him, saying that even if it wasn't the full 10 million gold, an initial amount would be helpful for preparing better samples. Feeling trapped, Harvin quickly agreed, promising to send word as soon as possible. Afterwards, Syria furiously confronted Harvin, yelling at him in frustration. She demanded to know where she was supposed to get such a large sum of money, immediately insisting that it was his father's responsibility to provide the deposit. Harvin, desperate, tried to convince Syria to gather all her savings, acknowledging that the required amount was huge. Syria angrily reminded him that they had already spent a fortune just to get Avalon admitted to the academy. Harvin then suggested that Syria ask her father-in-law for financial help. This enraged Syria, and she slammed the table, snapping that it was ridiculous to expect the mighty Brano family to beg their in-laws for money. Harvin, still hopeful, tried to reassure her that if they could just make this deal work, everything would turn around. However, Syria wasn't convinced and lashed out, reminding him that he had said the same thing many times before, always claiming that this time it will work, but nothing ever did. She warned that if he fell out of his father's favor, they would be left with nothing. Frustrated, Harvin shouted back, blaming his father for not supporting any of his efforts while giving full attention to Aaron. Syria, taken aback, asked if he meant Aaron. Harvin confirmed, angrily, seething over how Aaron was now working with Jeffrey to create a counterfeit detector. He was furious that she was acting so confident and clearly enjoying herself making his own struggles even worse. Surya grew suspicious, wondering if Jeffrey was truly getting involved in business again. Something felt off to her. She then told Harvin that they couldn't just ignore this situation. Harvin agreed and insisted that they needed to put both Aaron and Jeffrey in their place. However, Syria clarified that they needed to separate Jeffrey from Aaron. If Jeffrey kept interfering, they would have to prepare for the worst. She suggested that they take Aaron away from him. Meanwhile, Aaron excitedly informed Jeffrey that her grandfather approved the idea of making a counterfeit detector. Jeffrey, pleased with the news, patted her head and told her to sit down, promising to bring out some snacks soon. Aaron happily climbed onto a chair and asked if he wasn't curious about why she wanted to create the fake detector. Jeffrey, in his usual calm manner, replied that as long as it satisfied her curiosity, he didn't Mind Aaron hesitated, wondering if he truly trusted her or if he was just being indifferent. Shifting the topic, Jeffrey asked how her lessons were going. Aaron explained that her teacher was still busy, so she had been studying on her own. She was eager to see if Hilberg would eventually teach her, hoping the lessons would start soon. Jeffrey reassured her, saying there wasn't much for her to learn and that she should treat it as a way to relax her mind. Aaron agreed, realizing that making connections with other students was more important than the lessons themselves. She thought about how once Hilberg returned, students who had been skipping classes would also come back. She planned to decide whom to talk to and keep an eye on Hilberg to see if he was involved in any misdeeds. Additionally, she reminded herself to track the profits from the extra magic tools. With all these thoughts in mind, she decided to inspect the supplies for the day and then returned to her room. Aaron felt sleepy and dozed off, but quickly woke up feeling embarrassed. Jeffrey reassured her that it was normal at her age and suggested she take Na upstairs. As she lay in bed, she felt like she was wasting time because of all the work she still had to do, but she soon fell asleep. After some time, she woke up just as the Duke arrived to meet Jeffrey. Recognizing her grandfather's voice, Rapa Aeon, Aaron silently listened to their conversation. The Duke asked for Aaron, but Jeffrey told him she was asleep and to come back later. However, the Duke insisted that the matter was with Jeffrey, not Aaron. Hearing their tense conversation, Aaron worried that they might start arguing and thought about going downstairs, but then Jeffrey shocked her by saying that he was planning to get Aaron adopted. The Duke visits Jeffrey to discuss Aaron's future, announcing that he plans to formally adopt her at the upcoming annual meeting. Aaron, secretly listening from upstairs, is shocked initially, believing that Jeffrey will be the one adopting her. However, as the conversation continues, she realizes that's not the case, leaving her confused. The Duke assures Jeffrey that Aaron's role as his assistant won't be affected, implying that even after her adoption, she can continue working with him. Jeffrey remains indifferent, asking if that's all, but the Duke insists that Aaron needs parental care and cannot keep living as she is. He urges Jeffrey to consider what's best for her, emphasizing that she deserves a proper home. When Jeffrey questions who will be adopting Aaron, the Duke RS that he has already made arrangements and that the most suitable candidate would be Jeffy's own brother, someone from the direct family line. Aaron is terrified upon hearing that Jeffy's brother Harvin will be adopting her. Jeffrey scoffs at the idea, questioning how the Duke can claim to care for Aaron while suggesting Harvin as her guardian. The Duke defends his decision, arguing that Harvin is at least trying to lead the household. Unlike Jeffrey, who has wasted 2 years isolating himself, he asks if Jeffrey would rather keep things as they are then allow Harvey CK to adopt her, implying that it might be the best option for Aaron. Then the Duke makes a harsh comparison, asking if Jeffrey would still say the same things if Aaron were Viola, Jeffy's deceased daughter, who died in an explosion alongside his wife. Aaron is shocked to hear Viola's name, as she only knew about the tragedy but not how it still affected Jeffrey. The Duke accuses Jeffrey of seeing Aaron as a replacement for Viola, claiming that if he truly cared, he wouldn't just promise to take responsibility, he would act on it. He then brutally calls out Jeffrey past, saying that everyone knows he's trapped in his grief, clinging to the memories of his wife and daughter. He criticizes Jeffrey for obsessing over finding a culprit for an accident that happened years ago and for using Aaron to fill the void left by Viola. Finally, the Duke demands that Jeffrey stop pretending and let Aaron go instead of using her for his own emotional satisfaction. Jeffrey remained silent, unable to respond to the Duke's harsh words. Meanwhile, Aaron, who has been eavesdropping, starts feeling anxious, realizing that if this conversation continue, all her efforts will go to waste. To interrupt, she pretends to have just woken up and makes a noise, acting surprised to see her grandfather. The Duke, feeling a hint of regret, assumes that their conversation woke Aaron up to cover up the real reason for his visit. He lies, saying he was just curious about the fake detector's progress. Then he urges Aaron to properly greet her grandfather, to which she reluctantly agrees. Aaron notices Jeffy's sad expression while the Duke sighs. Curious, Aaron asks why he's sighing and if he's tired. The Duke reassures her that she's the only one who worries about him and thanks her. Aaron, touched by his kindness, refs on how good of a grandfather he is to her. She then hesitantly asks if she's supposed to leave the lab now. The Duke, patting her head, assures her that she won't be sent away for adoption, but will instead be kept close for longer. He explains that regardless of where she's adopted, She'll always have access to the lab. However, Erin is internally panicking, realizing that if she's adopted by her, then things will go very wrong. She debates whether to reveal that she's been bullied by the Harvick family, but fears that confronting them could be dangerous. Noticing her hesitation, the Duke directly asks if she dislikes Harvin. Flustered, Erin quickly denies it, but mentions that Avalon and BL don't like her. The Duke immediately understands and suggests how about staying with Jeffrey. Erin enthusiastically agrees, saying she loves being with Sir Jeffrey. She fondly recalls how he gives her snacks, books as presents, and even stood up for her when she was treated unfairly. To her, working and researching with Jeffrey feels warm, like sunshine, making her truly happy. The Duke, reassured by Erin's words, promises to find her a comfortable place to live. Erin cheerfully agrees. Later, she lies under the shade of a tree in the garden, reflecting that things have been peaceful for a while. The Duke hasn't given any updates about the adoption, and Teacher Hilberg hasn't returned either, making her feel a bit uneasy about calmness. Suddenly, Thelman and Nukes come running toward her. Thelman asks what she's doing, and Erin replies that she's reading a book titled The Principles of Management. Dylan finds it too difficult, but Nukes finds it interesting. When asked about the book, Erin explains that it teaches how to do business, which makes Delman even more uninterested, and defends the book, mentioning that his father has read it multiple times, which means it must be good. No excitedly tells Erin that she would get along well with his Ma Dolly. Erin recalls that she didn't interact much with Ma Dolly in her past life, but believes they could communicate well. She realizes that befriending Ma Dolly would also help her grow closer to Nook, which she sees as a win-win situation. Hearing this, Nooks happily agrees, while Thelman, feeling left out, considers reading the book as well. However, Nukes discourages him, saying he doesn't have to force himself. Thelman, still unsure, complains that he feels like the only one who doesn't understand anything. Just then, a butler arrives looking for Erin. She excitedly heads to meet the Duke. Upon seeing her, the Duke welcomes Erin back and assumes she must be tired from assisting Jeff. Erin cheerfully responds that she visited both the academy and the lab, sneakily adding that helping Jeffrey isn't tiring at all since she learned so much. The Duke, pleased with her enthusiasm, affectionately pats her head, and Erin giggles cutely in response. Erin nervously looks around, thinking that the Duke might bring up the adoption topic, especially with the annual meeting coming up. However, the Duke surprises her by saying he wants to give her a small gift as a token of appreciation for helping him. Erin, relieved that the conversation isn't about adoption, wonders what she should ask for. She considers requesting to be adopted by Jeffrey, but worries that it might seem too pushy. She also thinks about asking for jewels, which could be useful in the future, but realizes that it wouldn't help her win over the Duke's heart. After thinking carefully, she innocently asks for a wish coupon, which would allow her to make one request whenever she wants. The Duke is surprised at first, but then chuckles, understanding that she probably can't think of anything specific right now. He agrees, saying that as long as it's not something dangerous, he will grant her wish. Erin, feeling happy and excited, praises her grandfather and calls him the best. As the butler arrives, he informs the Duke that the preparations he ordered are complete and asks if they should wait. The Duke tells him there's no need and asks Erin to sit for a bit. While waiting, Erin notices a journal and gasps upon reading its title, Chadwick Diamond Mine Profitability Report. She quickly realizes that this is the ledger for the failed M. Harvin was in charge of. Recalling her past life, she remembers that the numbers were roughly manipulated to make the mine's profits look better than they actually were, even though they can't do anything about the down payment that TrueNet has already taken. She realizes that this is something they can still stop. At first, Erin thinks about informing the Duke right away about the contradictions in the ledger, but then she hesitates. A new idea strikes her. If she uses this information strategically, she might be able to create a reason to avoid being adopted by Harvin. Erin recalls the Chadwick mine, which Harvin hastily purchased to cover his business losses, only for it to become one of his biggest financial failures. The mine produced neither diamonds nor even coal, leading to a year of constant losses. To hide the failure from Rafer, Harvin manipulated the books, and Erin was tasked with cleaning up the sloppy bookkeeping. At the time, Harvin had ordered her to gloss over the numbers, and fearing she'd be fired, she had fudged the records. Now Aeon realizes that Harvin likely planned to slip this past RAF during the annual meeting, knowing that Rafn would be too busy to hold him accountable until after the event. However, by then it would be too late for proper punishment. Determined to prove that Harvin is unfit to be her adoptive parent, Erin decides that she must find solid evidence before the annual meeting. She remembers that Harvin kept a personal ledger where he recorded everything himself. If she can obtain and reveal this ledger, especially at the annual meeting, she could expose the truth to the Duke and everyone present. The Duke invites Erin to have dinner with him, giving her a rare opportunity to dine alongside Rafer. She eagerly agrees, but upon arriving she realizes that Harvin and his wife Syria are already present, making her nervous. Syria greets the Duke with a fake smile and notes Erin's presence with thinly veiled displeasure, making Erin flinch and hide behind the Duke. The Duke explains that he brought Erin along since they were together, but Syria suggests calling their sons Avalon and VL to join as well. However, the Duke rejects the idea, stating that he has urgent matters to discuss and they can invite the boys another time. Erin, growing anxious, realizes that the Duke is still considering Harvin for her adoption. If that weren't the case, he wouldn't have invited them to dinner. This worries her as she hasn't fully prepared her plan to expose Harvin yet. As everyone gathers for dinner, Jeffrey arrives late, prompting an annoyed reaction from Harvin, who scolds him for being the last to arrive despite being called long ago. However, Jeffrey remains unfazed, casually stating that he wouldn't have come at all if his assistant hadn't insisted. His nonchalant attitude frustrates Harvin, but before their argument escalates, the Duke intervenes, scolding them for constantly clashing whenever they meet. Erin, meanwhile, is stunned to realize that Jeffrey might have come because of her. As everyone takes their seats at the dining table, the Duke urges them to start eating before the food gets cold. However, Erin finds herself too anxious to eat, her nervousness causing her to turn pale. She worries that if she just picks at her food, the Duke might not look kindly on her. Noticing her unease, Jeffrey places a plate of food in front of her, offering her a dish that might be easier for her to eat. Erin, surprised by his gesture, thanks him and takes a bite. To her relief, the food is delicious and she starts to feel slightly more comfortable, gradually easing into the meal. During dinner, the Duke asks about the progress with the Fat Guild, to which Harvin responds confidently, stating that the guild is preparing top-quality samples and that they gave them less advanced payment than requested. The Duke, surprised, questions why an advance was given at all, but Harvin justifies it by explaining that many guilds are competing for this deal. Though the Duke seems skeptical, he acknowledges the situation. At this moment, Sarah subtly nudges Harvin, reminding him of something. Realizing it, Harvin clears his throat and addresses the Duke, stating that he wants to move forward with launching the research institute he had previously proposed. He explains that the staff has been finalized and the land has been secured, so now would be the perfect time to proceed. However, the Duke remains unconvinced, pointing out that they had previously agreed that establishing the institute was premature. Harvin, however, insists that now is the ideal moment and even suggests bringing Erin in as an apprentice at the institute. During dinner, Harvin proposes bringing Erin into his planned research institute, claiming it would allow her to learn economics and management while also helping to turn Jeffy's designs into products more efficiently. However, Erin immediately realizes his true intention. He wants to claim Jeffy's designs for his own profit and take her along as a bonus. But before Harvin can continue, the Duke interrupts, stating that before discussing the institute they must first decide on Erin's living arrangements. Harvin hesitates, realizing the Duke is referring to her adoption. At this point, Sarah steps in, revealing that she plans to find adoptive parents for Erin at this year's annual meeting. However, the Duke unexpectedly turns to Harvin, stating that he wants him to be a candidate for Erin's adoption. Hearing this, Erin becomes pale with fear, realizing that Harvin might actually become her adoptive parent, something she desperately wants to avoid.